and welcome to the Tidbury Talk Show. Today's topic: is there room for religion in the classroom? With the recent issues regarding free schools with predominant faiths, Ofsted's report on poor religious education and the exclusion from the National Curriculum 2014, is religious education a subject we should still be teaching children? What are the benefits and what should teachers consider?
First up on today's show, should religious education be included in the national curriculum? Currently, schools have a legal obligation to teach religious education, although parents can withdraw their children from the lessons. RE is not currently included in the national curriculum. Instead, it is the local councils that govern the RE syllabus. However, faith schools and academies can set their own syllabus.
Recently, Ofsted suggested that half of schools are failing to teach religious education effectively. In the 2010 report, Transforming Religious Education, it was questioned whether the current statutory arrangements for the local determination of the RE curriculum are effective.
Earlier in the week, we were able to gain a valuable insight into this issue through the eyes of Mrs. Mandela.
Students should be exposed to religions through the study of history, anthropology and social studies, but the in-depth teaching of religions and their beliefs should be left to individual families. Religion doesn't belong in schools unless it is being discussed from a historical or cultural standpoint.
Mrs. Mandela's thoughts are representative of some practitioners' views on how religion should be taught in the primary classroom.
I recently interviewed Chris Murphy, a representative of Ofsted. Thank you for meeting with me, Mr. Murphy. Local authorities coordinate religious education provision. In their executive summary, Ofsted have queried the effectiveness of this system. Why is this so?
Well, because following our inspections, this unfortunately is highlighted again and again as an issue. It's an area that we desperately need to address, as currently half of schools in the UK are only meeting satisfactory standards in religious education.
Are schools receiving enough support from their local councils and standing advisory councils on RE?
Well, the level of support that they're receiving is varied because of the nature of the support. There is obviously an urgent need for a review to be carried out around how this subject is supported at all levels across the board. If religious education was to be included in the primary national curriculum, all children would be learning the same information about religious education. This, however, does not apply to the pupils whose parents had sent them to specific schools of faith.
RE, being outside of the national curriculum, allows a more local control on what is being taught, meaning local councils can devise a syllabus that suits their area. There is already non-statutory guidance in place to support teachers, therefore is there any need for RE to be in the national curriculum?
Next up on today's show, we're looking for the equality or lack of equality that exists within our current religious education legislation. The degree of equality and equity to be seen in our current religious education policies differ depending upon your own personal views, how closely you look, and what exactly you're looking for.
There are, however, as always, several realities in existence that are instrumental to how this system has been built, and without alteration will continue to operate.
Incremental to our current religious education policy is the foundation upon which it is built.
Article 9 of the European Convention of Human Rights grants us all the right and liberty to believe, worship and think openly and freely, and to change these beliefs at our own accord. This
is vitally important to our understanding for one reason. The Equality Act of 2010 in relation to schools is without its own definition of religious belief. It simply cites this one. By this measure, the Equality Act serves to protect each pupil's right to the aforementioned liberties. The interesting question is whether it does or it doesn't.
In order to answer this question, we are better off focusing not on what the Equality Act covers, but on what is exempt from it.
The national curriculum itself is in fact exempt from infringing the Equality Act. This means that there could be no grounds for claiming inequality based on the content alone of religious education.
This immunity from legal backlash has created a platform with which to build a breadth of religious study that cannot be accused by a pupil of lacking religious equality, even if it was to do so.
Collective worship is now mandatory for all state-maintained schools. This is required by law to be broadly Christian in nature.
Is that legal?
Of course it is.
In relation to collective worship, maintained schools are also exempt from compliance with the Equality Act. It would actually be illegal for schools not to do it. We will now cross over to an interview with Harriet Harman expressing her views on the Equality Act of 2010.
I brought forward the Equality Act in 2010 to ensure everyone has a fair chance in life. This is important for a strong society and for individuals. The Act is intended to promote equality, fight discrimination and aid education. Despite any drawbacks in the details, this Act does in fact promote opportunity, equity and strength.
Next up on our show is, can religious education be delivered objectively?
Objective teaching in religious education means that no personal opinions or views are portrayed whilst informing children about other religions and cultures.
Does that not already happen in religious education?
Well, you would assume that religious education is taught devoid of bias and opinion like any other subject. However, an Ofsted report titled Religious Education Realising the Potential in 2003 suggested that RE in primary schools is isolated from other subjects in the national curriculum and was highlighted as a weak teaching area.
How should we teach RE properly in primary schools?
There are clear guidelines within the RE CPD handbook which specifically state teaching should not present opinions as if they are fact and not imply a correct opinion through discussion. The handbook also includes key information in how to deliver outstanding RE.
However, this is not the case for all RE teaching throughout England, with many schools fulfilling their religious educational requirements.
Additionally, the report found that nearly 6 out of 10 schools were not realising the full potential of the subject. Let's see what Michael Gove and Nicky Morgan have to say about all this.
Michael, you said in a statement in 2013 that all children need to acquire core knowledge and understanding of the beliefs and practices of the religions and worldviews, and under your leadership the teaching of RE has been found, according to Ofsted, low level. You have such a broad thesis on religion, and why is this not being implemented?
We introduced a framework for teachers on how to teach religious education effectively, and also made sure it retained its statutory requirements. Record numbers of children are participating in wide-ranging religious education, which was also included in the Ofsted report mentioned earlier, which covers all religious and worldviews, as I stated before.
What you say is true according to data published by the Department of Education, and the Review of Religious Education in England published in 2013, which also seconds your views on the need for systematic knowledge and representation of religion. Now let's pose a question to your successor, Nicky Morgan. Religious education was reviewed in 2013 by many national bodies. However, the scope of your changes was criticised and you were recently taken to court. According to the judge, you made an error in law and a breach of the duty to take care that information or knowledge included in the curriculum is conveyed in a pluralist manner. Do you believe religious education is due for another review?
You are correct about the recent decision in 2015. However, I believe the reviews have allowed us to update the religious education curriculum and provide more support to teachers. Since those reviews, Elizabeth Truss, who was the school's minister, created an RE expert group, which in January 2016 assisted the House of Lords on a briefing paper about RE education.
Does this mean you believe RE is currently taught as it is presented in the RE CPD handbook? And recently, the National Association of Teachers of Religious Education stated better teacher training was needed.
I think we are in a good position to improve upon religious education in England and strive towards supporting teachers so that they can fulfil the statutory requirements, whilst also making sure all children have the right to a religious education and excellent teaching in order to make this subject come alive.
Our final section. Does religious education cover controversial subjects?
Religious education can tackle many controversial issues. In many ways it helps children understand complex issues, like life and death, and form their own thoughts and theories on the big questions. Addressing these through religious viewpoints shows differing opinions and beliefs, but the acceptance of all. Webster states this in Creative Approaches to Teaching RE.
On the other hand, are we giving children eccentric coping mechanisms for grieving? Will they deal with issues properly or bury their heads in the sand and into religion? Does this constitute as objective teaching, or would we impose a particular religion? Such issues like bereavement are unavoidable in the classroom.
On the current topic of terrorism, teachers often feel ill-informed on how to deal with such issues. This combats misconceptions from other sources and community views which may be deemed as tarring certain religious groups with the same brush. Ed Pawson, the chairman of NATRE, stated at their recent conference that the development of religious literacy in young people in the UK could help to make them less vulnerable to religious radicalisation.
But in 2014, Ofsted Chief Inspector Sir Michael Wilshaw warned that 6 Muslim private schools in East London were placing their pupils at risk of radicalisation and exposure to extremist views, each school heavily biased towards Islamic teachings. Inspectors found that the curriculum of one of these schools focused entirely on Islamic themes, with pupils believing it was wrong to learn about other religions and displaying a narrow view of women in society. So does the over-teaching of religion in school also pose a threat?
Earlier in the week, Jeff caught up with Mrs Robertson, a head teacher in the Gateshead School. She spoke about the PREVENT programme and the Channel Awareness course, which is tackling radicalisation in schools.
The PREVENT programme has added to the sense that you treat Muslims as different, and the strategy makes any engagement directly questioning the faith of the position of Muslim students more challenging. The Channel Awareness course helps you spot radicalisation, but it may also skew your judgment on radicalisation.
But you have found it more useful than hindering?
We have found it more useful than hindering.
In conclusion, there are many pros and cons for the teaching of religious education in the classroom. It is clear there needs to be some guidance from the government on the content teachers should cover to ensure religions are represented equally. Reformation of the national curriculum to include RE would be ideal, however this seems unlikely.
Religion in the classroom needs to be approached respectively of every belief or none, and devoid of a teacher's personal views.